Have you ever stopped to think about why some things are against the law, while other things are just, well, weird? Today, we're going to dig into that fascinating, blurry line between what society calls a crime and what it just calls deviance. Let's get into it.
So, let's kick things off with a big question. Is everything that feels wrong actually illegal? And on the flip side, is everything that's illegal truly considered wrong by everyone? You'll see the answers aren't as black and white as you might think.
Okay, so here's our game plan. We're going to start by pinning down what we actually mean by deviance and crime. Then we'll look at how society keeps us all in line. After that, we'll explore why the rules in one place are so different from another, and finally, how the exact same law can be applied in totally different ways.
All right, let's dive right in. To really get a handle on what makes something deviant or criminal, we first have to understand the basic rule book that society operates by.
First up are norms. These are basically the unwritten, unspoken rules of everyday life. You know, things like waiting your turn at a line or not talking loudly on your phone in a quiet train car. No one's going to arrest you for it, but it's just what's expected.
Now, these norms don't just pop up out of nowhere. They're built on top of values. Values are the bigger, broader ideas about what a society thinks is right and wrong, or good and bad. So the value might be respect for others, and the norm is queuing politely.
And then you have the heavy hitters, mores. These are the really big, deeply held moral rules. They're often tied to tradition or religion. So breaking a norm might get you a dirty look, but violating a more, like being dishonest in a really serious way, that can get you shunned by the whole community.
Okay, so this is the absolute key difference. Criminal behavior is simple. You broke a written law and the state can punish you for it. Deviance, though, is all about breaking those unwritten social norms and values. The punishment there isn't a prison sentence, it's just disapproval.
This lets us sort behavior into three really interesting buckets. You've got stuff that's deviant but totally legal. Then there's stuff that's technically illegal, but a lot of people don't really see it as deviant. And of course, there's the stuff that's both, like murder.
Take this, for example, being part of the furry subculture, where people dress up as anthropomorphic animal characters. Now, some people might see that as pretty unusual or deviant, but it is absolutely not against the law.
So, we've got all these rules, written and unwritten, but how does society actually make sure people follow them? Well, that's where enforcement comes in.
The main tool society uses is something called sanctions. And that's really just a fancy word for consequences, both good and bad, that are meant to keep us all in check. It's the primary way we get social control.
We've all experienced informal sanctions. It's that disappointed look from a parent, being told off for cutting in line, or even just being ignored by your friends because you did something they didn't like. It's unofficial, but it works.
And on the other side, you have formal sanctions. These are the official, by-the-book punishments handed down by institutions like the police or the courts when you break an actual law. This is the stuff we usually think of when we talk about punishment for a crime.
And these formal punishments can look pretty different. Courts can dish out everything from prison time, that's a custodial sentence, to community service or hefty fines. Even the police can give out sanctions on the spot, like a caution or a penalty notice for something minor.
Okay, but here's where it starts to get really mind-bending. These laws and norms we've been talking about, they're not permanent. Let's get into why the definition of a crime is always shifting.
Now, this is a huge idea, so listen up. Crime is what's called a social construct. All that means is that there's nothing naturally or universally criminal about an act. We, as a society, decide what's a crime. And because of that, the definition changes all the time depending on where you are, when you are, and what culture you're in.
Want a perfect example? Just look at the legal status of homosexuality in the UK. Before 1967, it was a criminal offense. But as social values changed, the law slowly but surely caught up, until eventually, the age of consent was made equal for everyone, a massive legal shift in just a few decades.
Or think about polygamy. In the UK, it's a crime called bigamy, but in 58 other countries, it's perfectly legal, often for religious or cultural reasons. It just goes to show how much local traditions and beliefs shape the law.
You know, laws don't always change slowly. Sometimes, a single tragic event can change everything almost overnight. After the horrific mass shootings in Hungerford and then at Dunblane School in the UK, massive public campaigns led to some of the strictest gun laws anywhere in the world.
Okay, so laws can change.
But for our final piece of the puzzle, let's look at something just as important. Even when a law is set, the way it's applied can be incredibly flexible.
Let's take a real-world example, the London riots back in 2011. Now, the things people were doing, like theft and vandalism, were already crimes. But the context, this widespread social chaos, completely changed how the justice system reacted.
And this is wild. Courts were way more likely to give people prison sentences for crimes committed during the riots than for the exact same crimes committed under normal circumstances. This is often tied to the idea of a moral panic, where public fear pushes the courts to make an example out of people.
And it's not just the situation. Who you are matters a lot. Your age can determine whether you end up in a youth court. Your mental state can be the difference between a murder charge and a manslaughter charge. And unfortunately, police can be influenced by stereotypes or typifications about class or ethnicity when deciding who to focus on.
So all this leaves us with one last big idea to think about. If our laws are just a reflection of our society's values, and those values are always changing, what does that mean for the future? What rules will society live by tomorrow? Makes you think, doesn't it?